Now, he spent all that time studying nightmares and child psychology. Did he ever find any overlap in his studies of abduction or his interactions with abductees? Um, did he find any overlaps with those people and with his current knowledge of child psychology or like night terrors with children?
Okay, that's a very good question. Um, well, first of all, I should say that he basically concluded that the people who came to him with these stories, many of them were troubled. Indeed, they were troubled, but they were troubled as the effect of the experiences that they believed they had. They weren't making up the experiences because they were troubled. And that's a big distinction. So he said that the experiences that they had, in effect, caused their distress. Not that they were distressed and therefore they made up these experiences. So, for example, some critics said later that, well, these people, some of them were sexual abuse sufferers, women, let's say, who had trauma in their background, and they therefore concocted a story of being examined by alien beings in sort of sexually intrusive ways, because some of these women recalled or seemed to recall their pregnancies removed by the aliens for reproductive purposes. There were a lot of these stories. And he debunked that. He found absolutely no connection. Certainly no reason to think that any woman who had a sexual trauma was covering it up or explaining it through these abduction stories. No connection whatsoever. Again, these people that came to him with these stories were normal people. Normal in the sense that they had every, troubling incident in their background that everybody has, neglectful parents, alcoholism, drug abuse. These people lived in the world and they were like everybody else. But nothing that they had experienced explained these stories. That's what Mack was trying to establish, that they didn't explain these experiences at all.
And to add on to that, there was lots of young children, right?
Well, that was a big factor in the conclusion that he later adopted, that these experiences were somehow real, that there was no other way to explain them. Now, in what reality they occurred or dimension, Mack never could establish, and it remains mysterious. But the reason he believed that these things actually occurred somehow, as impossible as it is to imagine, rested on various observations that he made. But one of the more important ones was that little children, in some cases as young as 2 or 3, were reporting these abduction experiences, saying things like, "Little man, take me up in the sky. I fly in the sky." And so these kids could not be accused of picking this up from books they had read or movies they had seen. They were barely able to speak. So Mack found that very compelling, that these children would not really have a motive or an ability to make up really these astounding experiences. But he had many reasons for coming to his conclusions. Another is that UFOs were cited by some of these people, many of these people, around the time of their abduction experiences. It was often identified with or close to a UFO sighting. So they would remember later that they saw a UFO landing in their backyard or nearby, and then they had this experience, this abduction experiences. Sometimes there was evidence that the foliage had actually been disturbed outside the house. The tree branches were broken off, grass was disturbed. Um, um, and again, as I said, these people came from all walks of life. There was not there was no pattern that explained this, not a pattern at all. That would say that, oh yeah, these stories are coming from people like this. There was no pattern at all to profile to these people. They came from all walks of life. They were professionals. They were blue collar people, men, women, old, young. One of the distinguishing characteristics, by the way, was that abduction experiences seemed to run in the family, that often their parents and grandparents had reported experiences like these. And then the parents would say that, oh, my children are now coming to me telling me that they've had these experiences. So there seems to be, Mack found that there was some correlation, some family line running through these stories. Another thing that made a very powerful impression on him was that on occasion, there were third parties who were witnesses to some of these encounters. For example, he told the story of two girls who had a sleepover, and during the night, the mother of one of the girls at the house came down to check on them and found them missing from their beds. So obviously she was terribly alarmed. She called the police. They searched all over and couldn't find them. And the next morning or hours later, the girls turned up back in their beds. And later they remembered seeing a spaceship land outside their window and having had some kind of an abduction experience. Now, here's a case where they reported this experience later, but the mother confirmed a part of it by saying she found the girls missing. Now that's really intriguing. Now, not in in some cases, people weren't physically missing. There was another story that came up at a conference that Mack attended of a woman who fainted in her husband's arms. And while he was holding her, she had the experience of being transported up into the sky by some kind of a alien intelligence and flying around and seeing certain things, and then coming back to her body, and her husband was holding her the whole time. So she wasn't absent for that experience. So it's complicated. But anyway, for all the reasons I said, Mack believed that there was every reason to credit the stories of these people as real to them, certainly, and no other way to explain these stories. In all the accounts by skeptics and debunkers that have emerged since then, nobody has come up with a good explanation. It remains mysterious. So at least Mack said, look, I can't explain it, but I can't credit any other explanation either. So that's where we are. And if this is a spoiler alert to my book, I'm happy to admit it, that I don't solve the mystery, but it is a mystery.